To think that the political messaging, subtle, overt, and otherwise, or cultural commentary is something new in Star Wars is just wrong. It's always been there. Always. The fact that Disney acquired the franchise and different players were put in the leadership role doesn't mean that the messaging has changed, or the quantity of messaging has increased. In fact, I think the cultural commentary and political messaging found in Star Wars films now is way less than it was during the prequels or the Clone Wars cartoon. When George Lucas was asked if the Emperor was a Jedi in 1981, Lucas said, quote, "No, he was a politician. Richard M. Nixon was his name. He subverted the Senate, finally took over and became an imperial guy, and he was really evil, but he pretended to be a really nice guy," close quote. Oh, I bet if the internet was around back in 1981, there would be a big old hashtag boycott. Quote, "It was really about the Vietnam War, and that was the period where Nixon was trying to run for a second term, which got me to thinking historically about how democracies get turned into dictatorships. Because the democracies aren't overthrown, they're given away," close quote. In the 2004 re-release of Return of the Jedi, Lucas said that the Ewoks were inspired by the Viet Cong, who were able to defeat a technologically superior army. In the prequels, Man Oh Man, Lucas was never subtle, telling columnist Maureen Dowd that, quote, "Anakin Skywalker is a promising young man who is turned to the dark side by an older politician and becomes Darth Vader. George Bush is Darth Vader, Cheney is the Emperor," close quote. The parallels between the speeches in Revenge of the Sith, especially, and speeches given at the time by leading government officials are staggeringly similar. George Lucas's politics were and are well known, never shying away from giving his own opinion. If you think someone's film, book, game, piece of art, anything, is not going to be influenced by their life experience and events that take place in the world around them at the time, that's crazy. Maybe you've never made anything before? I don't know. Over the past few years, the Star Wars YouTube community has slowly but surely started to look more and more like the National Enquirer. Sensationalism, the rise of manufactured outrage, fake leaks, clickbait, made-up nonsense, scapegoating. The parallels between what the Star Wars YouTube community is starting to look like and the National Enquirer is hilarious. Even the covers look similar. The thumbnails. It's depressing. Are some of the folks who are upset nowadays about modern Star Wars, were they too young to recognize the political overtones and commentary when they watched the previous films? I mean, that could be, right? Maybe. That's a pretty good guess. Just because you didn't recognize it when you were cheering for the Ewoks as a kid, doesn't mean the political messaging wasn't being recognized by the adults in the room, or even by government officials at the time, because it was. I'm watching the Clone Wars right now. I'm probably almost halfway done with the series, and I can't believe that people are complaining about the super subtle messaging in the new films, yet they never complained about the messaging in the Clone Wars, because the Clone Wars is way more on the nose than anything in the new movies. I didn't like Canto Bight either. I didn't like the Canto Bight sequence whatsoever, but I didn't have a problem with the messaging. Really? You're gonna have a problem with animals? Alright. So why are so many people upset now? I don't know. What is science fiction? Science fiction is a way to comment on modern culture through the abstract. That is what science fiction is. Commentary about today, told in an unfamiliar setting. Star Trek, Blade Runner, 2001: A Space Odyssey, District 9, E.T., The Matrix, Minority Report, Gattaca, Mad Max, Starship Troopers, Dune, Fahrenheit 451, The Foundation Trilogy, Rendezvous with Rama, Elysium, even Wizard of Oz. All meaningful, relevant, and timeless sci-fi is an observation of the modern world told in abstract terms, told in another time or another place. That's what makes it good. It's not just robots and spaceships. One of the most cringy and eye-rolling things I've heard recently is people complaining about L3, the new droid from Solo. I really haven't heard anyone complain about the fact that she's like a programmed female droid, which is good, but I have heard a lot of people saying and parroting the idea that she's this propaganda piece uber lefty droid. Why is this? Well, I'm reading the book Last Shot right now, and the story in the book bounces from different time frames in Han Solo and Lando Calrissian's life. When the story goes back in time and we follow Lando, he's palling around with L3. And L3's thing, her mission in life, is droid liberation, fighting for droid rights, which is an interesting concept, right? A thing we as human beings are legitimately going to have to contend with in our near future with AI. Not to mention the theme of robots with consciousness, discovering they want freedom, is a sci-fi tale as old as time. I mean, when 3PO and R2-D2 walked into the cantina in episode 4, they were told to leave because the bartender said they don't serve their kind. That was definitely a little piece of 70s era social commentary. So why are people so up in arms this time around that L3 wants some freedom? It's weird, man. It's very strange to me. Can you imagine refusing to see a movie because someone associated with the production had a different political view than you? Can you imagine not watching a TV show because one of the actors didn't vote the way that you voted? Can you imagine not listening to a song because the artist doesn't believe what you believe? If that were the case, no one would ever go see a movie ever. We'd never watch anything challenging or read anything that wasn't algorithmically fed to us by predicting our bias. Our entire life would just be a YouTube algorithm that pumps out the same type of videos you want to watch over and over and over again. I don't agree with Stanley Kubrick's politics, therefore I am never gonna watch Full Metal Jacket. Boycott Full Metal Jacket. What a dull fucking existence you would have. There's no doubt that a lot of this is being perpetuated by opportunists who will ignite a new wildfire wherever the winds of convenience takes them next. I really get a kick out of when someone assumes where I, HelloGreedo, stand politically. It's fun to watch people craft arguments when they have zero information to go on, you know, they just kind of assume where I stand based off of nothing. I get called a right-winger because I was in the military, and I have some conservative viewpoints. I get called a lefty because I like a movie and hold some viewpoints that would be considered quote-unquote left-wing, whatever these fucking terms mean. I guess you just have to be one thing or the other, right? You gotta love something, you gotta hate something. You either gotta call people an SJW, or you gotta call people an alt-right sexist. It's all so stupid. It makes me sink in my seat. Nobody's thinking, people are silly. I never imagined that this kind of nonsense would infect the Star Wars community like it has. It really is a bummer. It's one thing to not like the new movies, right? I completely understand that. I'm on board with you. There's a lot of things that I don't like about the new movies, and there's a lot of things that I love about the new movies. The Last Jedi, I have a very love-hate relationship with it. Some of my favorite moments in the saga are in The Last Jedi. Some of my least favorite moments in the saga are in The Last Jedi. Very love-hate relationship. But the fact that Kathleen Kennedy wore a t-shirt doesn't make me think there's some grand conspiracy out there about Star Wars. Golly. Why the fuck am I even talking about this? People are dumb. People are silly. There's no nuance. Everybody's outraged. Nothing makes sense anymore. I'm going to bed. Sometimes I think about my nieces, nephews, cousins, and the kids in my life who watch Star Wars, and I try to imagine a future where they're complaining about a diverse cast. I mean, can you imagine that? I can't. They're not gonna give a damn. They're gonna look back at some of the silly YouTube rants complaining about different types of people in a movie and think we were a bunch of bitchin' and moanin' idiots. Every generation is known for something, and the more and more I see my generation, the more we get older, the more I feel like we're just that old dude on his porch screaming at people. I think my generation is gonna be known for just being super loud on the internet. And on the flip side of that kind of outrage, I don't think there should ever be a quota for that kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with writers wanting to write about things that they're familiar with. If I was to write a fiction book, I'd probably write a character very similar to myself. We write what we know, right? I've always said in every capacity that I'm 100% for writers and creative people being unshackled in their ideas and having absolute creative freedom. People are inspired by what they know and what they are around. Okay, so the Resistance is a military force, right? Then let me talk about my experience in the United States Navy. I've worked at a lot of random places in my life, and when it came to being around people of all shapes and sizes, backgrounds, cultures, you name it, nothing even came close to the Navy. Not even close. I even served with non-citizens who barely spoke English, serving in a foreign nation's military to earn their citizenship. The hodgepodge of humanity, the mixed bag of people, the jumble of languages and cultures, the human soup of diversity in my nation's military is probably the best example of people working together without much commonality, at least on the exterior, that I can imagine. Certainly that I've been a part of. So the idea that a fighting force that spans a galaxy, made up of other species from an incalculable amount of planets, wouldn't be a mixed salad of humanity is, to me, ridiculous. Arguing against that, again, to me, shows a real lack of experience. And when did different types of people being in a thing become a political statement? It's just so damn weird to me. It's so weird. And I've seen people say things like, Disney cares more about diversity than story. Which is, again, just doesn't make sense to me. It's a nonsense statement. It just makes no sense. It's just one of those things that people say that you can't really refute because they can't really back it up. It's just a balloon without anything in it. So you didn't like the story in the new movies. That's fine. Just say that. Don't concoct some nonsense explanation making up things to be upset about. You didn't like it. That's fine, that's cool. There's a lot of things that I don't like. It's okay to not like things. I really do look at my daughter and think to myself, when she watches The Force Awakens or Rogue One or The Last Jedi, she's not gonna care about anything that people are ranting and raving about. I can't believe you like that movie. Did you know the president of the company that made the movie said a thing that I did not like? I like Rey. I can't believe you like that movie. Can you believe the social media manager of the company that made the movie said a thing on the internet that I did not like? K2SO is funny. I like K2SO. As Private Jackson once told Corporal Upham, careful you don't step in the bullshit.